Welcome to AgriTechNZ's Global Agri-Futures event, the second in our series for this year, designed to bring innovation, experts, industry, and thought leaders together to explore new challenges and ways to solve them. Each month, AgriTechNZ and the New Zealand government will be inviting international guests to spark a topic for discussion. Designed to be highly interactive, these events facilitate exchange of ideas and new connections for those involved. Hello, welcome. Today's spark topic is why being part of an ecosystem is key to growth. And our special guest is Plug and Play, who are here to share insights into growth challenges faced by their corporate and startup partners and how innovators have navigated a way forward. We're just going to let a few more people into the room. Hello, welcome. Those who have just joined us, we just started. Plug and Play is headquartered in Silicon Valley, are present in 35 locations across 5 continents, have more than 500 corporate partners and 40,000 startups in their global network. They have an in-house VC ranked world's most active early stage investor globally by PitchBook. And this VC drives innovation across multiple industries, ag food tech being one of the key areas. Hello, welcome. Plug and Play also supports partners through innovation and accelerator programs. So today we're delighted to have with us Plug and Play guests from around the world. I'd like to introduce Sanja, Global Agtech Lead and Country Manager of Kazakhstan, who divides his time between Kazakhstan and US. Sanja, would you just like to unmute yourself and say hi?
Hi, everybody. It's exciting to be here. Actually, New Zealand holds a special place to my heart. Number of years ago, I auditioned at the New Zealand the Drama Academy in Wellington, and just absolutely fell in love not with also the Kiwi culture, but also the Maori culture. So really excited to be here presenting to you.
Thank you, Sanja. And we have Paulo, General Manager, based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Paulo, would you like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Michelle, thanks for the opportunity to be here to share a little bit about our experience and learning with the innovation community with the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. It will be a great session today.
Thank you, Paulo. And we have John, who leads the analyzing of AgTech Ventures. And John is based in Fargo, which he has since educated me. It's North Dakota. John?
Hello, everyone. I'm John. I am a Ventures Associate here in our Fargo office, focused exclusively on AgTech. Super excited to be here, tell you a little bit about the trends I've been watching, and hopefully learn a little bit from you guys.
Thanks, John. We have Sharif, Director of Corporate Innovation, based in San Francisco.
Hi, that's right. I'm adding one more time zone to this mix. Great to be here, everyone, and looking forward to a great session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharif. We have with us Jojo, co-founder of Plug and Play, who used to be based in Sunnyvale, California, I think, and is now in Quezon City, Philippines.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're calling from. Glad to be here and happy that this forum is happening. We look forward to expanding our food and agtech programs all across the world, including Asia, and of course, Australia and New Zealand, to be included in not just in Silicon Valley programs, but also our programs in Europe, including Milan, and of course in China, in Nanjing. So happy to be here again, and hopefully this would be very productive for everybody. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Jojo. And we have Patricia, Director of Corporate Partnerships of Asia Pacific, calling in from Singapore.
Hi, everyone. So pleasure to meet all of you. As Michelle mentioned, I'm based here in Singapore, so a little bit closer to all of you in terms of time zones. I oversee a lot of the partnerships here regionally, but as part of my interest with Sanja, we've been trying to look at the future of innovation in agriculture, as well as sustainability. So for anyone who's interested in either of those spaces, I would be happy to have a chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Plug and Play friends. It's a delight to have you with us today. And we hope you'll have fun getting to know everyone over the next 1.5 hours. I'm looking at the number and we have 98 in this big hall with one more coming in. Hello, welcome, you could join us. Next, I'd like to introduce Brandon O'Connell, Chief Executive of AgriTechNZ, to say a few words and introduce the New Zealand industry reps present in today's networking session. Brandon, please.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you, Michelle. I must say I've really been looking forward to this session when we get to connect with a group who advocate so strongly for the benefit of ecosystems and the power in making connections. It really rings true for I think everything that a lot of people in this call focus on, and definitely for AgriTech New Zealand. AgriTech New Zealand is an independent non-government organization with about 150 corporate members here in New Zealand, and our job is to connect the ecosystem, advocate for that ecosystem, and promote. So today is exactly the type of session that we're delighted to collaborate on with the rest of the NZ Inc. team today. Michelle has given us a great introduction and will guide us through the rest of the day. Of course, it's really important to be able to do this type of session at moments in time like this when travel isn't quite as easy as it has been in the past. And so being able to reach out and make these connections. This is probably one of the larger Zoom calls that I've been on when I look at so many faces on the screen, many of them familiar, and many of them I'm looking forward to getting to know over time. And I would put that call out to all of the New Zealand audience as well, that this today with the breakouts and with opportunities to follow up is a real opportunity to connect and understand what the Plug and Play team have been busy doing around the world and the insights that they've got and the connections that they've got. And I'm sure we can couple those together. Joining us today on the New Zealand side, I think I'm going to miss everybody if I try and introduce everybody, Michelle, but it's very important we point out Nikki Malloy from Callaghan, who's been working at putting these sessions together, and will be joining in some of the breakout sessions. Michelle herself has been instrumental in pulling these sessions together, and Caro and Kerry in the background are ready to run these sessions. And make sure that the breakouts run really well and we have some time to interact with each other. So maybe, Michelle, I'll hand it back to you to start us off.
Thank you, Brendan. Welcome, friends who have just joined us. Today's Spark topic is why being part of an ecosystem is key to growth. And our special guest is Plug and Play, who are here to share insights into growth challenges faced by corporate and startup partners and how innovators have navigated a way forward. Before we start, as it could be a little overwhelming to see so many faces on screen, and we're doing this as a big meeting hall instead of the usual webinars for a reason, could we please request everyone to have your name and organization appear on your screen tag? All you need to do is to just right click on your screen, look for rename, and then pop in your name and organization in the box. Now, today's event will unfold in 3 parts. For the first 30 minutes, we'll have an open innovation and AgTech insight sharing from Plug and Play and their partners. The second 20 to 30 minutes for questions and open discussions. And the last third of our 1.5 hours would be for the smaller group socials, as what Brandon had referred to. So we'll use this timing as a rough guide, and depending on our natural rhythm, we'll just adjust as we go along. We'll just admit a few more people into the room right now. Hello, welcome. We're just about to kick off, and I'd like to introduce Sanja. I'd like to cue Sanja rather to kick off our session. Sanja, please.
Thank you, Michelle, and kia ora, everybody. So we are actually going to show you a video right now that was made by our AgTech partner, the Mosaic Company. Mosaic Company is one of the largest producers and manufacturers of phosphate fertilizers. It's an account that me and John have been managing for the past year, been very successful in terms of the startups that we've introduced being converted to pilot projects and POCs. So we'll let Kim from Mosaic talk a little bit. Thank you.
Hi, this is Kim Nicholson. I'm the VP of AgTech and Innovation at the Mosaic Company. If you're not familiar with the Mosaic Company, we're essentially a mining company. We mine phosphate and potash rock, which we transform into commercial fertilizers. We mine in the US, Canada, Brazil, and through joint ventures in Peru and Saudi Arabia. We're about a $9 billion company with about 13,000 employees. And our products are focused on agricultural uses and particularly crop nutrition. My role here at Mosaic is to both lead our internal and external innovation. So our internal R&D and process technology are located in our group, where we're looking for novel and interesting ways to create our fertilizers, but I'm also responsible for external partnerships. And we've been on a mission for the last couple of years to expand into the soil health realm. So really broadening in crop nutrition to think more about how we harness the power of things like the microbiome in order to feed and nourish our crops. So through that exploration, we partnered with a number of startups, at least 4 that we've announced publicly: Anuvia, Bioconsortia, Sound, and AgBiome, and are exploring many other technologies as well. So you might wonder, how do we find these technologies and how does this interact with our own internal innovation? Well, that's where plug and play comes in. So in order for someone in a role like mine to stay on top of emerging innovation around the world, which is obviously a very dynamic thing, we've formed a number of partnerships, one of which is with the plug and play team, to help us look for specific technologies to fill out our portfolio or to solve specific problems. And so we joined Plug and Play about a year ago. It's been a great relationship thus far. I feel like we've given them a number of quite difficult challenges, and they have always come through with some interesting companies and interesting areas of innovation that we were not aware of. Their program of the demo deal flow is a really great way for us to introduce these technologies to the key scientists, researchers, and key stakeholders in our business. Throughout those various challenges that we've issued and the companies that Plug and Play has brought back to us, we've started a number of pilots. We are exploring more deeply a few of the company's technologies, and that has led us to some very interesting relationships or potential relationships. The Plug and Play team has been very responsive. They're very work in a very collaborative fashion, and we have really enjoyed our exchange with them, and has been a real asset to our program as we try to stay on top of emerging technologies around the globe.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for watching that video from Kim, and I'll just launch into my presentation. Okay, great. Michelle, can everybody see? I think we're good on this.
Yes, all good, but if we could request you to, yes, perfect, thank you.
Okay, let me just make sure I can move. Okay, so my presentation is blocked out into 3. There's a plug and play overview. I'll review some open innovation principles, and then I'll actually bring in my colleague Sharif Sadawi to cover some case studies, which show you some of the accomplishments that we've done. So our journey started in the mid-1990s. We like to call our lucky building. This is a building our CEO and co-founder Saeed Amidi owned. And this was the first offices of Google, PayPal, Logitech, and Danger. And we actually made investments at that time in PayPal and Logitech. PayPal, actually, funny enough, half the rent was converted to stock for Saeed. Fast forward to 2006, we established our venture capital arm and purchased our current headquarters from Phillips in Sunnyvale. And that's where we at first, brought in startups, gave them offices, and then we would invite major VC companies to also come. And it was just a perfect place for these, both the VCs and the startups to interact. Then in 2012, when corporations began getting interested in these deal flows that we're providing for VCs, we started our industry-themed verticals. The first ones being things like fintech and insurtech. Then in 2015, those industry verticals expanded to where we are active in over 18 industries today. So in brief, we connect the best startups to the world's largest corporations and governments around the globe. And how do we do this? We're an ecosystem of change makers. Not only do we bring corporations and startups together, but we bring an entire support network of governments, universities, regulators, mentors, VC, and investors. We like to say it takes a whole village for this innovation journey to be successful. So you can break down plug and play in three basic pillars. The first is our accelerator programs, of which we run 60+ industry-themed accelerators in over 36 cities around the world. Then we have our corporate innovation, where we work individually with our corporate partners to supercharge their innovation journey. And then finally, our venture capital arm, which, as Michelle mentioned, we are a major active investor in early stage startups, and we actually co-invest with 180 VCs. We don't try and compete with them. And then, as you see here, an all-in-one solution. As you see on the chunk of the startups, and I really want to mention right now, for startups, our services are completely free. We don't charge equity for introductions for our services. It's actually our corporate partners and our government partners that fund all these activities. So if you're a startup, please engage with us. Please engage with our accelerator programs so we can help you reach the global community. And then for corporations, one of the key things that we do, I mentioned the deal flow sessions, where they give us our challenge areas and focus areas, and we source some of the best startups for them within our ecosystem. I also want to mention in our accelerator programs, the corporate partners will actually sit on a board. So if we're running a fintech program, we'll have a series of banks. So for example, in Paris, BNP Paribas, in Stuttgart, Daimler-Benz, and Porsche in mobility. And these guys actually vote on which startups enter our accelerator program. And the entire purpose is at the end of that 3 months that we see actionable results in terms of pilot projects, POCs, and a knowledge exchange. And in the investment arm, the VC co-investments and direct investments that I mentioned before. So in 2020, we accelerated over 2,000 startups. And we're headed to break our record this year with our new offices in Istanbul, in Ben Guerir, Morocco, and in Nur Sultan, Kazakhstan, where I'm calling from you now. And then just a brief overview of kind of the services that startups get from us. I would say the most important are the corporate introductions and pilot POC facilitation. That's why startups continue to be active in our ecosystem and join our accelerator programs. But as you see, we provide a number of other services. So we backed, some of the biggest companies, some major unicorns, and actually the past 2 years, during the pandemic has been a big boom in investments. And as you see here, these are just a handful of our major investments. In the interesting case of PayPal and Honey, PayPal ended up buying Honey, which we invested in. As Michelle mentioned, we have 500+ corporate partners around the world, 100 of which just joined in 2020. And what we saw from that the pandemic has actually, just that we're all here on a Zoom call, it has accelerated the shift towards innovation and actually opened up companies. We did see companies kind of close down, but we also saw many more companies join this open innovation journey. So this is just a highlight of some of our major partners, and I would actually like to mention that Contact Energy of New Zealand is a partner in our energy vertical in Silicon Valley. It's a partnership that's been going on about a year, and some point in 2022, when New Zealand opens up, our energy team will be traveling to do an event with Contact Energy, and the rest of us hope to make it, because I personally would love to see New Zealand again. I mentioned we're active in 18+ industries. This is our industry coverage. Animal health, agtech, and sustainability being some of the newest verticals that we have just launched in the past year and a half. Once again, we're globally established. This is just a map of the 36+ locations that we're active in. As I mentioned, Nur Sultan and Istanbul, and Ben Gurion, Casablanca being some of the most recent ones. And it's important to mention, we have a 650+ workforce, 200 of which are venture analysts. These are basically dedicated staff who are actively sourcing the best startups and vetting them. And then we work with a lot of universities. We work with universities not only in sourcing, in startups, but also helping, working with them to develop those startups as well when they're still within the university. And then, going back to our 200+ venture staff, we have the largest proactive global sourcing innovation funnel. This is when we said the tap is always on. So constantly, our staff are sourcing. They source roughly 15,000 per year, 5% of which eventually make it into our playbook. So we have a proprietary software called Playbook, where about 40,000 pre-qualified startups currently exist. And we use this tool to manage our deal flows, make our introductions, be able to easier collaborate with startups. So for example, we ask them to always update their profiles on there, so that when our venture staff are sourcing for a deal flow, they have up-to-date knowledge and they can make that introduction much easier wherever you may be in the world. So that brief highlight about Plug and Play. Feel free in the breakout rooms to ask any particular questions that you have about us. So real quickly, in terms of open innovation principles, what you see here, if you have an existing business and you merge into the market and really grow it at some point, it will be a mature and saturated market, and you'll be on the decline. And at some point, there'll be a new player who disrupts the market when you're at this point or at this stage. And we call this the innovator's dilemma. There are new curves and life cycles starting constantly. So what got you here, won't get you there. Innovation is really key. You must reinvent yourself all the time, especially in the current environment where innovation is happening at a fast pace. And I would say, especially in the agricultural industry, you have the added pressures of resource depletion and climate change that really push you. Everybody eats, right? But when it comes with lack of water or overpopulation, it's important to still innovate. So, we have the traditional closed innovation model, which most corporations, abide by. They keep everything in-house, think tanks, design teams, their hackathons, but knowledge is pretty limited. And while some of the ideas from a traditional closed model eventually make it to the market, it's not as successful as if you open up. And so we believe that you can do the closed innovation model, but also do it within an open innovation model. We believe by bringing the outside world into your process, you're bringing a lot of knowledge into your organization, which is typically limited. You attend conferences, read trend reports, co-create with startups and the outside world, and participate in external innovation platforms like Plug and Play. But it's not just knowledge that is important, it's also time to market. And we found through the open innovation model that time to market is much quicker. So we have the tech frontier, that's constantly going up. And using the traditional model, you're not going to keep up with the tech frontier. It is specifically projects with startups that are outside of your organization, and through this open innovation model that you're going to be able to keep up with the tech frontier or even potentially lead it. As we all know, startups, they're scrappy, they're always pushing, and that kind of energy and the knowledge that they can bring is key to this. So what are some next steps for core companies in New Zealand that can take? So look for the missing pieces that can be provided by the company itself. It's important to understand where you lack knowledge, acknowledge it so that you can go forward and seek it. Strengthening your organizational capabilities and enhancing employee skill sets. Look to bring innovative staff people who have experience working with startups. And then accelerate the exploration phase of new business fields and your time to market, harkening back to my last slide. And then finally, this is something I want to leave with the corporates that are in the room. This is kind of the team you need to work with startups, right? You need to have a strong team similar to Kim and Mosaic. They had most of this in place, but then they really got it all flushed out when we started working with them. So I mean, it's quite self-explanatory. You can read it through. It's important to have a champion. So Kim, for example, is the champion from Mosaic that works with us. And she's the one that brings in all the various business units. So with Mosaic, we've worked with their AgTech team, their supply chain team, their mining team, and their chemicals team. And it's the champion that brings those people together. Within those business units, there's technical experts. So quite self-explanatory. But this is really what you need to have within your corporation to be able to begin to work with startups productively and not waste anybody's time. And that was quite quick. I'll conclude it there. Sharif, if you can jump in and kind of cover the case study section, which is quite exciting.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Sanjar. That was a really great presentation. So I'm just going to go through a few examples from around the world of, kind of some success stories or case studies from Plug and Play. The first one is Startup Autobahn. That's our accelerator program in Stuttgart, Germany. And the way this was born was one of our partners in Silicon Valley, Daimler Mercedes. They asked us to set up kind of the similar thing that we're doing in Silicon Valley, but bring it to their backyard in Stuttgart. So we went there with one partner. Today, we've got over 30 partners, including BP, Porsche, Rolls-Royce, and it's really become one of the best accelerators in the world. And if you go to the next slide, Sanjar, these are just some stats from kind of their engagement with us. So as you can see, there's over 150 startups have been accelerated through that, leading to a load of commercial pilots. And what I love about what happens in Stuttgart, Germany, and all of our accelerators around the world is that there's real impact that corporates get and real impact that startups get through those introductions. A good example is in Mercedes case. If you buy a Mercedes car today, there's technology in that car that's a direct result of our introductions. Sanjar was talking earlier about the power of introducing corporations to startups to fill that gap that they can't do themselves. So an example of that is SoundHound, one of our portfolio companies. They were actually introduced to Mercedes-Benz, and their voice recognition technology is now embedded in every Mercedes infotainment system. So that's just one example of kind of the power of these accelerators and making those matchmaking. The second example is our partnership with Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So for those of you who are not familiar with this Alliance to End Plastic Waste, it's a group of about 50 or so companies that have come together to, well, you guessed it, end the problem of plastic waste. So they came to Plug and Play. They asked us to set up 3 different hubs or 3 different accelerator programs around the world, in Silicon Valley at our headquarters, in Singapore, and in Paris. And if you go to the next page, these are some quick stats from the first 8 months of that program. So we accelerated 32 startups that led to over 60 commercial pilots with those 50+ member organizations. And actually, I just had a look at the stats that aren't released yet, but the startups that have been accelerated in those programs have collectively raised over 50 million as a result of just direct introductions through our network to either investors or to those corporate partners that are part of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So After the first 9 months, sorry, if you just go back 1 second. Yeah, so they were so impressed by what happened in those first 3 hubs that they decided to expand the partnership. Paulo from Brazil will tell you we just launched in Sao Paulo in Brazil. We've also launched another one in Shanghai and Johannesburg in South Africa. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So now let's look at it kind of from the startup lens. I just wanted to highlight 2 examples from the agtech space because I know that's everybody on this call is interested in. So the first is Arable. Arable was in our network. So one of those 45,000 plus startups that are in our network that are constantly being introduced to corporate partners. We were introducing them to corporate partners through deal flows. One of them was Trident. And again, Paulo can probably give you some more background on this because it's a Brazilian investment firm. And as a result of that introduction, Trident were really impressed with Arable. Arable only had all their business was in the US. Not only did Trident invest in the company, but they also opened up Latin America to them. So now Arable have expanded into South America and they've got a good chunk of their business development comes from South America. So really wanted to highlight kind of the impact of not only attracting investment dollars for startups, but also opening up new markets. Which brings me to my second one, which is Soil Tech. And Fargo, they came through our program in Fargo, North Dakota, where John is based, so he can probably tell you more about this. But they came through our program. We introduced them to kind of the innovation ecosystem in Fargo, North Dakota, and they had such a good time that they ended up setting up an office in Fargo. They're hiring their first person. So again, this just highlights the ability not only to help startups, but in New Zealand's case, we'd love to see startups not only enter New Zealand, but set up a permanent presence there. And the last example is from Alberta. So this actually isn't off the ground yet. We just signed an agreement with the government of Alberta to launch 3 different programs. So 2 are sector specific, clean resources and digital health. And then the third is a sector agnostic program. And the reason I wanted to highlight this example is, first of all, in terms of kind of population and GDP, Alberta and New Zealand are actually very similar, about 4 million in population. The GDP is very similar as well. And so are kind of the main industries there. So agriculture is very big in Alberta as it is in New Zealand. They're also trying to transition to renewable energy and clean resources, which I know New Zealand is really ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to clean resources. But this is kind of an example of the government really backing Plug and Play, seeing our success stories in other parts of the world and asking us to set up shop in Alberta, help local startups, attract international startups, and kind of connect or build a bridge between Alberta and our other global hubs around the world. But that's it from me. Thank you, Sanjar, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Sharif, and I will stop the share. Well, hope you learned something new, and me and Sharif will be in the breakout rooms, but we'll hand it over to Michelle and John Mann now. Thank you, guys.
Alrighty, Michelle, how are we doing on time?
We are running a little bit tight, so I think we could stick with the 15-minute sharing and then Q&A, which will bring us to an hour before we go into breakout socials. I think 30 minutes for breakout socials would be good. So let's keep an eye on the clock.
Alrighty, I will do that.
Thank you, John.
Sounds good. Can you see my presentation all right?
Yes, all good.
Okay, awesome, fantastic.
It's not full screen yet.
It's not full screen. Okay, how about now, maybe? Because I do.
No, not yet.
Let me give it one more shot. Hold up. I think it doesn't like that it's in the window. Okay, sorry about this.
No worries. Hello, everyone and friends who've just joined. We now have John, who's dialing in from Fargo to share with us global agtech trends. More friends joining. Hello, welcome.
Okay, how about now? It's telling me sharing is paused. So
yeah, we're not seeing it in full screen, but if need be, we can just roll.
Okay. Yeah, if it looks all right, let me know if things aren't visible. And I'll get started because we're tight on time.
John, we lost the video, I believe.
You lost the video. Okay. Well, we'll try sharing the full desktop and do that. Hopefully that works. Okay, how about now?
Looking good now.
Fantastic. Okay. Now that we have that out of the way, hello everyone. I'm John Mann. I'm the AgTech Associate here in Fargo, North Dakota. Relatively small place in the Midwest. But that's where we opened up our first AgTech focused office back in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. Today, I'm going to be talking about a couple different trends. Some of them are what we focus on in North Dakota. Some of them are a little bit more worldwide, but they're relatively general. These are just a couple of things that we focus on, but there's a lot more under the hood. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is open field agriculture. Our office here in Fargo, North Dakota is mostly focused on row crops. So things like wheat, soybeans, corn. But we do kind of look at technology applications, things like that, that are a little bit broader. It really depends on the corporations that we're working with. But the things I'm going to talk about today are synthetic fertilizer alternatives, sensing and analytics, and robotics and automation. So when we're talking about synthetic fertilizer alternatives, this will be things like biostimulants, biofertilizers, microbials, organics, and fungi-related applications. These have gained a lot of popularity in the last 5 or so years, as there's been an increasing focus on soil health through the regenerative ag movement. Regenerative ag is, I don't know kind of who all is on the call, what kind of knowledge base we have or not. So I'm going to keep this relatively high level. If we have questions or anything and you want to talk in depth, we can talk after, but I'm going to keep it high level. So that'll be things like no-till, interseeding, cover crops, crop rotations, things like that. And biostimulants, biofertilizer, microbial products, they really help return the soil to its natural state, where you have lots of living organisms in them that help make nutrients bioavailable to crops. So this kind of trend, the creation of these products is driven by sustainability, a search for yield. Farmers are always trying to increase yield because that's tied to their profitability, the regenerative ag movement, and of course, organic production, which we've seen quite the increase, especially in California and among high value crops. We're even seeing some more organic corn here in the Midwest. And the advantage of it is that if it improves soil health, it's better for the environment. It can be cost effective. It can be used in conjunction with other products. So they're relatively plug and play when it comes to spraying with other things. But yeah, the big part is going to be soil health. And then once you switch to regenerative ag practices, which should be the goal with these types of products, you can use less fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide, things like that. The biggest challenges with this industry is there's a lot of snake oil products that make lots of claims, but don't really have the efficacy and back it up. There's hundreds of options out there. It's really tough to parse through them, see what's legit and what is not. There's different application requirements for them. Some of them will be a spray, some of them will be a dry product. They might have to be applied multiple times per year. So it can be a bit of a learning curve for farmers. They can also have high costs. So some of them are low cost, but many of them are limited to high value agriculture, where they're making a lot more money per acre and can afford to spend a bit more. I'm also going to share a little bit of information on the kind of venture capital side of ag tech on some of these. So you can see the investments over time has been increasing. A lot of interest starting in 2017, a lot of VC investment in this area. And then the investment, the actual count, the graph's a little bit misleading because you had some really large acquisitions in 2015 and 2019. But if you look closely, you can see since 2014, there's been some really solid growth and a lot more IPO action in the last couple of years, which is interesting to see. A couple of startups I wanted to spotlight. One of these, Chonex, just went through our program. Big fan of them. What they actually do is they take chicken manure and they run it through black soldier larvae, and then they use this to create a biostimulant dry product. And then what you do is you brew a tea with that. So this dry product is essentially a bunch of microorganisms, highly concentrated, and then they ship this out to farmers, and then farmers brew this in a big vat and they spray it on their field. And the whole goal is to get all these microbes into the soil to help plants grow, help with weed resistance. They've got a lot of different benefits along when paired with regenerative ag. Annie's Ag is another big company I'm a fan of. What they do is they actually put microbes in the seed, and which gives it a very long shelf life and a really good success rate in actually getting the microbes into the soil and surviving. And so when that seed is planted, once that plant actually comes out, the microbes are in the soil, they'll be in the root system, and they help with nitrogen fixation and carbon sequestration. So awesome approach, very, very cost effective. And then the last one is True Algae, and True Algae has developed a biostimulant product that they extract from algae. And so they'll spray this on the field, and The kind of big benefits I've talked to them about are increased shelf life of high value products like strawberries, as well as improved uptake of certain micronutrients. Already, I got to keep an eye on time. It's going fast. Another one is robotics and automation. This one mostly covers weeding, spraying, tractor automation, labor enhancement, primarily driven by labor shortages and farm safety focus, demand for increased data, some regulations. Advantages: it improves data collection, reduced labor needs, can eliminate chemical usage, and better soil health. So this is really focused on in the weeding when you look at chemical usage. So lots of countries are banning glyphosate. You need something to replace that. And there's some other chemical options, but one of the best ways is actually physical weeding. And the most efficient way to do this is through a weeding robot, as labor to do weeding is quite expensive. Challenges is going to be computer recognition and accuracy. So actually identifying the weeds where they are and destroying them. The consistency, making sure that you're actually destroying every weed on each pass. And then the parts and service and costs. So most of these automated platforms are coming as farming as a service. And so these startups actually provide a service. They'll come out and do it all for you. But there's a big challenge around that with actually having the parts available and providing a service. A little bit on the deal count for that, increasing. Most of these stats are from the first 6 months of 2021. So I expect most of these industries to have a lot more deals and a lot more capital put into them since in the past. So a couple of startups I'd like to spotlight. Small Robot Company and Robot are two that actually took part in our program. Small Robot Company is focused on weeding. They actually have two robots, one that surveys the field and the other one that destroys. Robot is a company trying to take advantage of the regenerative ag movement. They have a small robot that goes in between corn rows and it applies in-season nitrogen and also can plant interseed cover crops. So they actually plant a seed that will then grow. You'll harvest your corn, and then whatever you grew, you could potentially harvest or just use it as a cover on your field. And then Sabanto is the one I recently met this summer. They're developing a farming as a service technology designed to perform row crop operations on an automated platform. Super cool, a retrofit potential. There's basically two types of self-driving tractor technology, which is either retrofit or a brand new machine. And retrofit is going to be very important as we have farmers transitioning with their current tractors. And the last one is sensing and analytics. This is a very busy space comprised of field hardware, satellite data, drones, and predictive analytics. This can boost sustainability, helps farmers get better yields, and can help them when it comes to increased climate variability. So they'll get lots of weather data. They can find out what their crops need when they need it. But the challenges are mainly around capital intensiveness of it. Some hardware can be $1,000 per unit, and it should really be one per acre, so it can get very expensive. There can be quite a bit of maintenance involved with actually putting them in the field and then removing them. We've got quite cold winters here, so you can't leave most of your devices out over the winter. And then internet connectivity is a challenge in a lot of places. So sometimes they'll have it so that the data can be saved and then uploaded somewhere else. Deal count increasing a lot, very busy space, a lot of VC activity, and the investments have been increasing at quite a pace. The three I'm going to highlight are Centera, which is a drone company from Minneapolis. They deliver in-season data analytics. They fly their drones as a service. Soil Tech Wireless, which was highlighted, as well as Arable. Soil Tech, big fan of them. They actually have an in-ground sensor that you plant and then you harvest it. But it'll track different metrics like moisture, temp, humidity, location. They actually have an impact sensor, and they harvest that when you harvest those. Right now, they're primarily focused on things like potatoes and sugar beets here in the Red River Valley. And so they'll actually harvest it with all the sugar beets, and it can sit in that pile in storage and give you alerts on, where it is in the supply chain, what it's like in storage conditions. Super cool. And then of course, Arable, which we talked about earlier as well. And they've got a sensor that they put out in the fields that can track all sorts of data. Expensive, but they capture a lot of really good data for farmers to help optimize their operations. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about indoor agriculture, and I'm going to move relatively quickly because we're running out of time. This is also called CEA, Controlled Environment Agriculture. Market drivers are decreasing arable land, demand for local and organic produce, climate change and environmental awareness, and increasing population. It's mostly applicable in leafy greens and some high-value fruits like tomatoes, strawberries, and peppers. It's most viable in areas where you don't have the growing conditions and you have to ship them from faraway places like North Dakota. We have to ship most of our fruits in from Michigan, California, Mexico, places like that. The Netherlands and Finland are actually two very innovative countries in this space, especially the Netherlands. and China is expected to be an up and coming power. So breaking indoor growing down into kind of 3 areas is going to be container, warehouse, and greenhouse. And then we got some methods, hydroponics and aeroponics. So in greenhouse growing, you'll mostly see hydroponics. So this is where the roots will actually, the roots will be submerged into nutrient dense water. And then you have aeroponics, which they'll actually spray the water directly onto the roots. Aeroponics is much more complicated, much more costly, but also is much more efficient. You'll mostly see that in warehouse setups, usually going vertical, and also shipping containers. So the drivers behind this are sustainability, local fresh food, and climate change. Big advantages is clean produce. It can be organic depending on what they're using for nutrients. There's a high level of automation, so you can reduce the amount of labor needed, and greater freshness. The challenges are mainly going to be around energy consumption, production cost. It's still quite a bit more expensive. You might have them on the grocery stores there. I know we do here. Production is limited. You can only do so many crops, and it can be very complex in the case of aeroponics. Deal count, this is one of the hottest industries in ag tech, quite honestly, but a lot of VC interest and quite a bit of investment flowing to it. Startup spotlighting, Clean Green Solutions, they offer mobile aeroponics equipment. So most startups will either actually grow themselves or they'll offer equipment. Plenty, one of the largest producers of leafy greens in California, backed by Bezos. So they're pretty big, worth quite a bit. And Smart Cultiva, they offer a wide range of sensing devices to help the farmer to get real-time data and analytics. This is a huge part of indoor growing. Lots of startups focused on usually not necessarily building the hardware themselves, but providing AI analytics. Next, I'll be talking about aquaculture, which isn't an interest area of Fargo, but is getting increasing interest from other areas around the world. We don't have a lot of water here, unfortunately. But disease prevention is a big one, controlling the chemicals that are used, keeping track of diseases that have infected fish or shrimp, whatever it might be, and maintaining conditions. Drivers are concerns about transmission of farm to wild species, and unlicensed antibiotics are still used. Advantages, better control of preventative medicines, improve overall health, and it's easy to implement into current management strategy. The biggest challenges around it are that vaccines are still extremely labor intensive, they're experimental, and government regulations can make things challenging. Startup spotlight. So we've got Viaqua Therapeutics. They develop an orally administrated particle-based platform for the delivery of RNA protein. Observe Technologies out of Switzerland. They identify behavioral changes in the fish during feeding to detect early disease symptoms. And Feedvax, which develops an oral vaccine for farm fish that can be added to the feed. Then we also have supply chain management. This is big in olive agriculture, but I decided not to focus on this for the other areas. Food safety, quality management, controlling lead times, and environmental impact. Basically, the big advantages of these kinds of technologies is that they shorten transportation time, they boost pond to plate, and they raise awareness of sustainability of marine products. The biggest challenge is that there's a few major producers. Buyers usually buy from traditional markets, and there's heavy training and adaptation to existing food safety protocols. Couple startups, pelagic data system, small solar powered sensors to capture data, Legit Fish, a traceability solution that increases the value of seafood products, and This Fish, which they identify their catch with a unique code using a tag or label. Then we have software and IoT solutions, precision farming, used to boost on-land production, optimize growth and feed utilization. On-land is pretty exciting, a lot of viability in here. I know there's about 40 or so companies in Minnesota, my home state, where they're growing indoors. Better understanding of fish appetites, allow for full view of nutrition. It makes it easier to make decisions that'll make your operation profitable, but high costs, reluctance to adopt technology, and intensive data collection can make adoption challenging. And I've got 3 startups. I'm running short on time, so I'm going to skip over these and jump to our last section, which is livestock. So I'm going to cover only 2 trends for livestock: alternative feeds and IoT and analytics. So deal count for alternative feeds increasing, a little bit flat. Investments over time, these can be skewed by large acquisitions, as you can see in 2015 and 2019. So alternative feed additives are getting kind of popularity. This can come in the form of insect-based feed additives, or microbe-based feed additives. Drivers on this are sustainability, tart margins, sick livestock, high methane emissions from livestock, and antibiotic overuse. The advantages of these products can be improved cattle feed efficiency, relatively low cost, improved livestock health. They're easy to implement and they can reduce methane emissions. Challenges are short shelf life. Many products don't have efficacy or strong trial data, and supply chain and adoption. Startup Spotlight, ProAgri, they took part in my program. I absolutely love these folks. They're from Australia, but they developed an antibiotic-free feed that can reduce methane production, increase feed efficiency, and reduce the time it takes to transition to grain, which makes the operation more profitable. Symbrosia, which is a company out of Hawaii that uses a red seaweed, I'm not going to try the name, to create a feed additive that can reduce methane by 90%. So that's very exciting. And then Entocycle. Entocycle takes local food waste and feeds it to black soldier larvae. And then they have a protein-rich feed product that you can feed to livestock, from chickens to cattle. Next trend I'm going to cover very quickly is IoT and analytics. This can be things like physical sensors and monitoring devices, ear tags, maybe collars, drones and cameras. Drivers behind this are the labor shortage. This has been a very, very challenging thing in all industries, from poultry to cattle. There's been a focus on livestock health and the value of data for upstream and downstream participants. It's huge. This is true in almost every industry though. Advantages, you get great insights into livestock health. You can really optimize the environment that they're in, and you can reduce the need for labor. Challenges, the hardware can be costly. Benefits rely on buy-in in the farmers to actually use the data and implement changes to their operation, and reliable internet connection. We have about 1 million cattle here in North Dakota and about 780,000 people. Fortunately, we have excellent internet connection on here, but it's a challenge in many parts of the US. Startups on the spotlight are going to be precision livestock technologies. Couldn't fit that on the slide, but they use artificial intelligence and machine vision to deliver data to boost production. They basically have these cameras that look at feed bunks, and they're working on lots of different applications. Second one is cattle scan. They actually have a small device that you feed to dairy cows, almost similar to magnets that they used to put in cattle before feed had better quality, but they can monitor different health aspects, see when the cow is about to calve. Super interesting, gather a lot of good data that's streamed straight to a smartphone. And then Canthus, this is a pretty mature one. They use computer vision and artificial intelligence to observe nutritional, behavior, health, and environmental activities that can impact livestock production. All right, I think I did all right on time there, hopefully. Thank you all for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
That was amazing. It felt like a fast forward, but still a cliffhanger. I think you've got enough material for us to unpack over the course of a day. So thank you so much for being so thorough. The way you have structured the information not only gives us a sense of the challenges and the deals and investment, trajectories, but I thought what was really exciting is when you took us through some of the great things that other companies from around the world are doing. It allows us to keep an eye on some of the other upcoming leaders as well. So, it helps us get beyond our immediate environment, and very much appreciated. Okay, so we originally factored in some time for Q&A, which would be really good, but we're kind of a little bit torn right now because this is obviously the moment where we break into social groups for further discussion. The intention is for our plug and play guests to move around rooms while we have our small group discussions. So I'm thinking whether we should have maybe just take 2 questions before we do that, or head straight into the breakout rooms. What do you think, Brendan?
Let's see who's quickest off the mark to get 2 questions in now, and then we'll go to the breakout rooms.
Okay, so anyone with a burning question, please just unmute yourself now and just take us through what's on your mind. Gary says, I'm interested in NFTs. Anyone from Plug and Play might want to give that a shot to talk about how NFTs relate to agri or agri-food tech.
Is that, you mean nutrient film technique, or are you talking about the crypto NFTs? I'll let John handle.
I mean, I can handle either of them, although Sandra is probably more qualified to talk about the indoor growing. But as far as NFTs, I think there's been some interest in our fintech vertical. And I know I've actually talked to a startup trying to implement NFTs. They were super early stage, and they were looking at correlating an environmental NFT. Yeah, I'm assuming you mean like the actual like blockchain technology type of thing. I've seen that with one startup where they're working on having NFTs in some sort of metaverse where you can buy an NFT and then you own land and you can actually get the return from the produce that's sold, or you could actually take delivery of that. And yes, I can share the presentation afterwards. But yeah, that's the only other thing I've seen in agriculture. I don't think NFTs aren't on the forefront of food and ag quite yet.
Thank you. And Mark has asked what Plug and Play wants to do in New Zealand. Mark, maybe I could take that. The short answer is don't know. Right now, it's still getting to know one another, and the Plug and Play team has been really helpful in allowing us to take a view into what's happening around the world. So we don't know. There will be many potential areas of collaboration, but we're taking it one step at a time, and we'll see what happens after this call.
Michelle, if I may add at minimum, this is also a call for New Zealand startups to engage with us. We want more, Kiwi startups to engage. As you saw, we are engaging a lot with Australian startups, but we do want to see more New Zealand based startups in our playbooks.
Okay, I've noticed a few other questions coming in. And John has just sent a link on AgTech NFT. Thank you, John. Caroline's pointing out that Mark Junet has his hand up. I can't see you, Mark. Would you want to unmute yourself and
good etiquette, Mark. Well done.
Sure. I think it was Sanjar mentioned Plug and Play working with universities and particularly student teams at universities. I wonder if someone could say, have you done much work with researchers and staff at universities in spitting out research from their labs? So more on the from the research front end, not just the student teams.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we travel to a lot of universities and engage with both the faculty who are dealing with research, and really it's their students, right, that are developing these new startups, or even themselves. The faculty themselves moving on to startups. So we engage the whole ecosystem within universities to allow us to be on the cutting edge of innovation. And so we really do want to also engage with New Zealand-based research organizations and universities.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think what's unique about universities for in the startup world is that universities generally have kind of the big expensive equipment that your average startup couldn't get hold of, which is why so many of the especially the technical startups are based out of or start their life out in universities, and then making that transition from the kind of world of academia to kind of the business world, we help bridge that gap for them.
Thank you. Trevor, you mentioned bio, is that bio?
Biochar. I can take this one.
Okay, thank you.
So we have actually looked at biochar, but most of our partners are working in row crop agriculture. And from what I've seen, looked at, it's pretty tough to make it viable when you're working on the scale of tens of thousands of acres. But definitely interesting if costs can come down, or if you're looking at a very long time period. That's the tough part about agriculture, is a lot of times farmers are looking at year to year rather than 5 to 10 years. But yeah, it's definitely an area that we look at.
And someone sent me a direct message question. They said, is it just startups in NZ you'd like to chat to? We've essentially been in an extended startup phase. So we use startup kind of generally as a general term. We work with, series A, B, C, D startups, as well as early stage startups. So actually most of our corporate partners want to see a startup with an MVP, traction with current corporates. They have products. So don't think of startup as just like an early stage, company, but also later stage company.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of two main things that make us unique as an accelerator. Is one, as Sanjar mentioned before, is we don't take any equity in startups, so we keep those barriers as low as possible to attract the best startups. And then the second point is, like you said, in any given cohort, you could find a pre-seed all the way to Series D. startup. But yeah, I mean, the main focus for us is because we have our corporate partners and governments who are the funders of these projects, that the startups ultimately will be able to work with them. So that's kind of really the main criteria that we look for, is will corporate partners end up working with these startups?
And one final thing from Patricia, I also wanted to mention that the reason why we do this is because a stage agnostic platform makes more sense for corporations. Every corporate's different. Some of them have an ambition to do incremental innovation, apply new services, solutions to their portfolio. Others are looking at more early stage emerging technologies. So I've had some clients come to me saying, hey, Patricia, I have no idea how to apply blockchain to my company. I might be ready to do so in 3 years. I need to start talking to the blockchain experts. Can I be introduced to some of these innovators? And on the other flip side, I have corporates coming to me saying, hey, I need an enterprise solution that can deploy into 5 countries within the span of 3 months. So really, it's about having ability to touch base on any kind of startup, depending on what they're looking for, and that can be stage agnostic in nature.
Thank you, Patricia. Okay, we'll tackle one more question before we go into our social groups. From Jeff, what is the interest in pastoral free-range livestock farming?
We've had some interest in technologies around that. However, most of our corporate partners, we don't do a ton of livestock in North Dakota. Most of that will be in Topeka, Kansas. And that's usually focused on feedlots, but I have seen a little bit of interest around kind of free range open field technologies like drones to find cattle, do counts, things like that.
Thank you, John. All right, so we'll now head into our 10 breakout groups where you'll find Brandon and our Callaghan and NZTE colleagues there who will facilitate the conversation. We're running a little bit short. Original plan was to have people say hi from Callaghan and NZTE, but I'm just going to just voice over who they are. So we've got Nikki, Ross Pierce, and Jill Jung, and Shane Dooley from Callaghan. From NZTE would be Nadia, John, Duncan, and Bodine, and myself. So Carrie, over to you to whisk us into smaller groups.
I just had an interesting question that was asked of me regarding how we work with other accelerators and incubators. So it's actually quite collaborative. Their alumni, they can introduce their alumni to us, and then they can join our programs, and which leads to many corporate introductions. So, the Sprout Accelerator, for example, can say, hey, our startups after our program went on to join the Plug and Play program. And even within Plug and Play programs, we've had multiple startups go through multiple programs because different corporates in different locations have been interested in them. So, when it comes to working with VCs, when it comes to working with other accelerators and then as well incubators, we try to be as collaborative and as non-competitive as possible.
Thank you, Sanja. Okay, I think most of us who are still in the event have come back to the main room. So thank you everyone for making our second Global AgriFutures session such a fruitful one. And we hope that this event has provided everybody with practical insights for your team, and that the new connections that you forged today will continue to be developed. The event is officially over, but we'll leave this virtual hall open for 10 minutes for you to continue side chats using the chat box and to exchange contact information if you wish to. To our Plug and Play guests, it was great having you join us, and we hope you had fun too. To our New Zealand participants, yes, Sanja, please go ahead.
No, I said absolutely. It was a joy.
To our dear New Zealand participants, we look forward to hearing any feedback from you, and we also look forward to our next, for you joining our next Global AgriFutures event in December. Thank you everyone, and have a great rest of the week.